Loneliness and solitude are often mistaken for one another, but they are profoundly different experiences. Loneliness is a feeling of absence, a yearning for connection that seems out of reach. It's the ache of being unseen, unheard, and unloved. It doesn't matter if you're in a crowded room or sitting by yourself. Loneliness is not about the physical presence of others. It's about the emotional distance that can exist even when you're surrounded by people. It's an internal emptiness that whispers you don't belong, you're not enough, or you are forgotten. Solitude, on the other hand, is an entirely different space. It's not about lack, it's about presence, your own presence. Solitude is the choice to step away from the noise, to retreat into yourself, not to escape, but to discover. It's a sacred pause in a world that demands constant interaction, validation, and proof of your social worth. In solitude, you can sit with your thoughts, hear the rhythm of your own heart, and reconnect with the essence of who you are outside of others' expectations. Where loneliness feels heavy and hollow, solitude can feel grounding and liberating. It's a space where you can breathe deeply, free from the pressure to perform, to please, or to explain yourself. It's a place to let your mind wander, to let your soul rest, and to remind yourself that your worth isn't dependent on who is standing next to you. Solitude allows you to listen to the quiet truths that get drowned out in the chaos of everyday life, the truths that tell you who you are when no one is watching. But the line between loneliness and solitude can sometimes blur, especially when the world around you equates being alone with being lonely. It takes intention to cultivate solitude, to move through the discomfort of being by yourself and embrace the richness it offers. It requires a shift in perspective, a willingness to see aloneness not as a punishment, but as an opportunity. Solitude doesn't deny the importance of human connection. Instead, it offers a reminder that connection with yourself is equally vital. It's in solitude that you can begin to nurture yourself, to ask what you truly need, and to tend to the parts of you that may have been neglected in the busyness of life. The myth of enoughness is one of the most pervasive and damaging narratives we encounter in life. It tells us that our value as individuals is constantly up for debate, that we must prove ourselves worthy through an endless cycle of achievements, appearances, and relationships. This myth thrives on comparison, whispering in our ears that we must look, act, or be a certain way to deserve love, respect, or belonging. And it doesn't stop there. It invades our friendships, our careers, and even our sense of self. For women, this myth can be especially cruel. From an early age, society sets up impossible standards of perfection. You're expected to be kind, but not a pushover, confident, but not arrogant, ambitious, but not threatening. And somehow, on top of all that, you're supposed to cultivate deep, meaningful friendships that validate your social worth. The myth of enoughness ties your sense of value to external markers: how many people like you, how many people choose you, and how many people choose you, and how many people affirm that you belong. This relentless pursuit of enough is exhausting because the finish line is always moving. You might think, if I just have a certain number of close friends, then I'll feel secure. If I can just prove I'm likable, then I'll finally be enough. But the truth is, enoughness isn't something you achieve, it's something you decide. Yet the myth keeps us running in circles, chasing an ever elusive standard that was never ours to begin with. What makes the myth even more insidious is how it preys on our vulnerabilities. It takes our moments of loneliness, of feeling unseen or misunderstood, and weaponizes them against us. It tells us that if we're alone, it's because we're unworthy. If we don't have a circle of friends, it's because we're not good enough. And this narrative can lead to a spiral of self-doubt and shame, where we internalize the idea that our worth is conditional, dependent on meeting some external criteria that's always just out of reach. But here's the thing about the myth of enoughness: it thrives on silence and shame. It's designed to make you feel like you're the only one struggling, the only one who feels inadequate, the only one who doesn't have it all figured out. This isolation reinforces the idea that you're lacking, that you're fundamentally flawed, and that your worth is contingent on fixing yourself. And so the cycle continues. The myth also distracts us from what really matters. Instead of focusing on authentic connections, it encourages us to focus on appearances. Instead of embracing our imperfections, it pressures us to hide them. And instead of celebrating our individuality, it urges us to conform, to fit into a narrow definition of what it means to be enough. This constant striving doesn't just erode our self-esteem, it diminishes our ability to show up as our true selves in relationships. It teaches us to perform rather than to connect, to seek approval rather than to be present, and to measure our value by the standards of others rather than by the truth of who we are. This myth isn't just a personal struggle, it's a cultural one. It's reinforced by the media, by social expectations, and by the stories we tell ourselves about what it means to belong. It keeps us disconnected from each other, from ourselves, and from the freedom that comes with knowing we don't have to earn our worth. And yet, because it's so deeply ingrained, it can be incredibly hard to recognize, let alone dismantle. Vulnerability is one of the most misunderstood aspects of human connection. At its core, vulnerability is the willingness to show up, to be seen as you truly are, and to risk the uncertainty of being judged, misunderstood, or even rejected. It's exposing the parts of yourself that feel fragile or raw, sharing the stories that are messy and unfinished, and admitting the emotions that society often tells us to hide. Vulnerability can feel terrifying because it strips away the mask we wear, leaving us open and unguarded. And yet it's also the foundation of connection, the very thing we crave most deeply as human beings. When we think about connection, we often imagine the moments of laughter, shared experiences, and joy that bring us closer to others. But what we don't always recognize is that the heart of connection lies in our willingness to be vulnerable. It's not the polished, picture-perfect moments that create true intimacy. It's the times when we let someone see our imperfections, our doubts, and our fears. Vulnerability is the bridge that allows two people to move from surface-level interactions to genuine understanding. And yet many of us are taught to fear vulnerability. We're told to keep our emotions in check, to present ourselves as strong, self-sufficient, and in control. Society often equates vulnerability with weakness, as if admitting that we're struggling or unsure somehow diminishes our worth. As a result, we build walls around ourselves, believing that they will protect us from pain. But those same walls that keep out pain also keep out love, empathy, and connection. In trying to avoid the risk of vulnerability, we end up isolating ourselves, creating a barrier between who we truly are and the relationships we long for. One of the reasons vulnerability feels so risky is that it involves uncertainty. When you open yourself up to someone, there are no guarantees. Will they understand? Will they accept you? Will they accept you? Will they offer compassion, or will they dismiss your feelings? The fear of the unknown can be paralyzing, and for many it feels safer to hide behind a facade. But without vulnerability, connection becomes shallow and transactional, a performance rather than a relationship. What makes vulnerability so powerful is that it invites authenticity. When you allow yourself to be seen flaws, fears, and all you give others permission to do the same, it creates a space where mutual trust can grow, where both people can feel safe being exactly who they are. This kind of connection doesn't require perfection, it requires courage. The courage to say, "This is me, and I hope you'll still choose to stand beside me." However, the path to vulnerability is not without its challenges. For many of us, the fear of rejection looms large. We carry the wounds of past experiences, times when we've been judged, dismissed, or hurt after opening up. These memories can make us hesitant to take the risk again, convincing us that it's better to keep our guard up. But what we often fail to realize is that vulnerability isn't about guaranteeing a positive outcome. It's about showing up regardless of the outcome. It's about saying, even if this doesn't go the way I hope, I am willing to be brave enough to try. Vulnerability also requires self-compassion. You cannot share your true self with others if you're constantly judging or criticizing yourself. When you offer yourself grace and kindness, you create a foundation of inner strength that makes it easier to navigate the uncertainty of vulnerability. You become less reliant on external validation because your sense of worth comes from within. This inner stability allows you to engage in relationships from a place of openness rather than fear. But vulnerability isn't just about individual relationships, it's about how we relate to the world as a whole. When we embrace vulnerability, we contribute to a culture of connection, a culture where people feel less alone in their struggles and more empowered to be their authentic selves. By showing up vulnerably, we say to others, you are not alone in this. I see you and I'm willing to stand here with you. This kind of openness has the power to transform not only our personal lives, but also our communities and society at large. Self-friendship is one of the most undervalued yet transformative relationships a person can cultivate. In a world that emphasizes external connections, we often overlook the importance of the relationship we have with ourselves. But the truth is, the way we treat ourselves sets the tone for every other relationship in our lives. Self-friendship is about more than self-care or self-indulgence. It's about developing a deep, compassionate, and enduring partnership with yourself, one that sustains you in times of joy, hardship, and everything in between. At its heart, self-friendship begins with self-awareness. To truly befriend yourself, you must first understand who you are. This means taking the time to listen to your inner voice, to notice your emotions, and to explore your needs and desires without judgment. It's about giving yourself the space to be imperfect and human, rather than holding yourself to impossible standards. Self-awareness is the foundation upon which self-friendship is built because it allows you to approach yourself with curiosity rather than criticism. For many, self-friendship can feel unfamiliar, even uncomfortable. We're often taught to prioritize the needs of others over our own, to seek validation and support from external sources rather than from within. This conditioning can leave us disconnected from ourselves, unsure of how to meet our own needs or provide the comfort we might readily offer to a friend. But learning to be your own friend means breaking free from the belief that your worth is dependent on how others perceive you. It's about recognizing that you are enough just as you are, and that you deserve the same kindness and compassion you would give to someone else. One of the most powerful aspects of self-friendship is its ability to create a sense of stability and resilience. When you have a strong relationship with yourself, you become less reliant on external validation to feel whole. This doesn't mean isolating yourself or rejecting connections with others. Rather, it means that your sense of worth isn't tied to their opinions or actions. Self-friendship allows you to weather the inevitable ups and downs of life with greater confidence because you know that you are always there for yourself, no matter what. Self-friendship also involves learning to forgive yourself. We all make mistakes, experience setbacks, and struggle with feelings of inadequacy. But where we might extend grace to a friend in the same situation, we often criticize ourselves harshly. To be your own friend, you must practice self-forgiveness not as an act of excusing harmful behavior, but as a way of releasing the shame and self-blame that can weigh you down. Forgiveness allows you to move forward with a lighter heart and a clearer sense of purpose. Another key element of self-friendship is self-compassion. This means treating yourself with the same care and understanding you would offer to a close friend. It's acknowledging your pain without minimizing it, offering yourself encouragement instead of criticism, and being patient with yourself as you grow and heal. Self-compassion isn't about letting yourself off the hook or avoiding accountability. It's about recognizing that you are worthy of kindness, even when you fall short of your own expectations. Boundaries are another crucial part of self-friendship. Being a good friend to yourself means protecting your energy, your time, and your well-being. It means saying no when you need to, even if it disappoints others, and saying yes to the things that truly nourish your soul. Boundaries are an act of self-respect and self-love, and they allow you to show up in the world as your best self. Self-friendship doesn't mean you have to go it alone. In fact, the stronger your relationship with yourself, the more open you become to authentic connections with others. When you are secure in who you are, you're able to engage in relationships from a place of abundance rather than scarce of a bowl. You don't approach others with the expectation that they will fill a void or complete you. Instead, you connect from a place of mutual respect and shared vulnerability. Cultivating self-friendship takes time and effort. It requires unlearning harmful patterns, challenging the inner critic, and making a conscious choice to prioritize your relationship with yourself. It's a process of growth and discovery, one that invites you to embrace your whole self, flaws, strengths, and everything in between. This journey is not always easy, but it is profoundly rewarding, offering a sense of peace and fulfillment that can't be found anywhere else. Rewriting the narrative is an act of reclamation, a decision to take ownership of the stories that define your life and shape your identity. We are surrounded by narratives from the moment we're born, stories about what it means to be successful, to be loved, to belong. These stories are woven into our culture, our families, and our experiences, often without our consent. They tell us who we should be, what we should want, and how we should behave, but not all of these narratives serve us. In fact, many of them constrain us, perpetuating shame, doubt, and fear. Rewriting the narrative means breaking free from these limiting stories and crafting ones that align with your truth. For women, the narratives are particularly loaded. From fairy tales to modern media, we're told that our value lies in our relationships, our appearances, or our ability to nurture others. We're shown images of the ideal woman and told to strive for perfection, whether it's in our careers, our homes, or our friendships. These stories create a rigid framework for what a good life looks like, leaving little room for individuality or authenticity. If you don't fit the mold, if you're single, if you don't have a bustling social circle, if you choose a path that diverges from the expected, you risk being labeled as less than, as incomplete, as someone who simply hasn't gotten it right. But the truth is, these narratives are not universal truths. They are constructs born out of cultural norms and societal expectations. They are not fixed, and they do not have to define you. Rewriting the narrative begins with recognizing that these stories are not yours unless you choose to accept them. It's about stepping back and asking, who wrote this script? And do I want to keep living it? This process requires self-reflection and courage, because it often means confronting deeply ingrained beliefs and challenging the status quo. One of the most powerful aspects of rewriting the narrative is the realization that your story doesn't have to look like anyone else's. Society may glorify the image of a woman surrounded by friends, thriving in a bustling social life, but your story is valid even if it looks different. Perhaps your narrative is one of solitude and self-discovery, of investing in a few deeply meaningful relationships rather than many surface-level ones. Or maybe it's a story of finding community in unconventional ways, of redefining what connection means on your own terms. Whatever it is, it's yours to create. Rewriting the narrative also involves challenging the internalized voices that tell you what you should be. These voices often echo the expectations of others, parents, teachers, peers, or even cultural ideals. They tell you that you're not enough, or too much, or that you're somehow failing because your life doesn't align with the prescribed script. To rewrite the narrative, you must first quiet these voices and listen to your own. This means cultivating self-awareness and tuning into your intuition, allowing yourself to imagine a life that feels authentic and fulfilling to you, even if it doesn't fit societal norms. This process isn't just about rejecting harmful narratives, it's also about replacing them with empowering ones. It's about telling yourself new stories that reflect your values, your aspirations, and your truth. If the old narrative says you're not lovable unless you have a certain number of friends, the new one might say, my worth is not determined by others' approval. If the old story says you're incomplete without a partner, the new one might say, I am whole and enough on my own. These new narratives become the foundation for how you see yourself and how you move through the world. Rewriting the narrative doesn't mean ignoring the pain or challenges that shaped your old story. It's not about pretending that the past doesn't matter or that the wounds you carry aren't real. Instead, it's about integrating those experiences into a new framework, one where you are no longer defined by what happened to you, but by how you choose to respond. It's about turning moments of struggle into lessons of strength and using your scars as a testament to your resilience. This process also requires letting go of the need for external validation. When you rewrite your narrative, you may face resistance from others who are invested in the old story. People might question your choices or try to pull you back into familiar roles. This is because your decision to rewrite your narrative can be unsettling to those who haven't yet questioned their own. But rewriting the narrative isn't about pleasing others, it's about honoring yourself. It's about deciding that your truth matters more than their comfort, and that your story is worth telling in your own voice. Rewriting the narrative is not a one-time act, it's an ongoing process. As you grow and evolve, your story will too. It's about staying open to change, allowing yourself the freedom to rewrite as often as you need, and embracing the idea that your narrative is a living, breathing thing just like you.